The first time Willow Vance saw a man pay $300 in gold coins just to watch her walk free, she thought he must be either drunk or touched in the head. It was August 1878 in Newton, Kansas, and the summer heat made the Red Garter Saloon feel like the inside of a cast iron skillet left too long on the fire. Willow had been wiping down tables since before dawn, her calico dress stained with whiskey and tobacco juice, her auburn hair falling loose from its pins. She was 20 years old and had been indentured to Marcus Holloway, the saloon owner, for nearly 2 years, working off her late father's gambling debts. The contract had seemed endless, a noose around her neck that tightened with every passing month as Holloway added invented expenses to her tally. The stranger walked in just past noon, tall and broad-shouldered, with dust coating his worn leather vest and dark trousers. His hat was pulled low, but Willow caught a glimpse of intense green eyes and a strong jaw shadowed with several days of stubble. He moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin, yet there was something careful about him too, like he was always aware of every person in the room. "Whiskey," he said, his voice low and steady as he approached the bar. Willow set down her rag and moved behind the counter, pouring him a measure from the good bottle, not the watered-down swill Holloway served to most customers. Something told her this man would know the difference. He tossed back the drink and set the glass down gently, his eyes meeting hers. "You Willow Vance," her heart skipped. Nobody used her full name anymore. Here she was just Willow, or sometimes Girl, or less pleasant things when the customers had too much to drink. "Who's asking?" she replied, keeping her voice neutral. "Name's Grant Oliver," he said. "I knew your father." Thomas Vance. The name hit her like a physical blow. She had not heard anyone speak her father's name with anything but contempt in months. "My father's dead," she said flatly. "I know. I was sorry to hear it." Grant's expression softened. "He was a good man who made some bad choices at the end." "That's a kind way of putting it." Willow grabbed his glass to refill it, but he covered the rim with his hand. "How much do you owe Holloway?" The question was so direct, so unexpected, that Willow almost laughed. "What business is that of yours?" "Your father saved my life once, about 5 years back. I was working a cattle drive, got thrown from my horse and pinned under him. Your daddy pulled me out, got the horse off me. I told him if he ever needed anything, he should find me." Willow felt her throat tighten. She vaguely remembered her father mentioning something about that back when he had been sober more often than not. "Well, he's past needing anything now." "But you're not," Grant said quietly. "How much?" Marcus Holloway emerged from his office then, his considerable bulk moving with surprising speed when he sensed a potential problem. He was a large man with thinning hair and cold blue eyes that never quite smiled even when his mouth did. "This gentleman bothering you, Willow?" Holloway asked, though his tone suggested he was more interested in protecting his property than her comfort. "Just making conversation," Grant said evenly. Holloway looked Grant up and down, assessing him the way he assessed everything, calculating worth and threat in equal measure. "Conversation's free. Whiskey ain't. You planning to order anything else, or you just taking up space at my bar?" "Actually," Grant said, reaching into his vest pocket, "I'm interested in buying something from you." Holloway's eyes lit up with greed. "What might that be?" "Her contract." Grant nodded toward Willow. The saloon seemed to go quiet, though the piano player in the corner kept plinking away and the card game in the back continued. Willow felt the world tilt slightly, like she had stood up too fast. "Her contract ain't for sale," Holloway said, but his eyes betrayed his interest. "Everything's for sale at the right price," Grant replied. He pulled out a leather pouch and set it on the bar with a heavy clink. "How much does she owe you?" Holloway licked his lips. $300. Plus, she's got value as a worker. I'd need compensation for losing her services. She's indentured, not enslaved, Grant said, his voice taking on a hard edge. There's a difference, and the law recognizes it. You can't charge me more than the debt owed. She's got room and board expenses, clothing, food, which are meant to be included as part of her labor, Grant interrupted. I know the law, Holloway. How much is the actual debt? Willow watched this exchange with her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. She had seen the ledger once, back when she first signed the papers. Her father had owed $185, but over the past 2 years, Holloway had added charges for everything from broken glasses to the cost of washing her dress. $300, Holloway insisted. That's what it'll take. Grant was silent for a moment, his jaw working. Then he picked up the pouch and counted out gold coins, each one clinking against the bar top with a sound like a small bell ringing. Willow counted with him, mesmerized. 10, 20, 30 coins, each one worth $10. There's your 300, Grant said. Now get the contract. Holloway stared at the money, then at Grant, then at Willow. For a moment she thought he might refuse, might find some other way to keep her bound to this place. But greed won out, as it always did with men like Holloway. He swept the coins into his meaty hands and disappeared into his office, returning a moment later with a piece of paper covered in her father's shaky signature and her own careful script. She's all yours, Holloway said, handing over the contract. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you bought. Girls got a sharp tongue and a stubborn streak a mile wide. Grant took the paper, glanced at it, then without ceremony tore it in half, then in half again. He let the pieces fall to the bar like snow. You're free, he said to Willow. She stared at the torn pieces of paper, at this stranger who had just spent a small fortune to free her from a debt she had begun to think she would die working off. Her hands were shaking. I don't understand, she whispered. Nothing to understand. Your father helped me when I needed it. I'm helping you. Grant picked up his hat from the bar and settled it on his head. You got somewhere to go. The question hit her like cold water. Somewhere to go. She had been so focused on surviving each day that she had not thought about what freedom might actually mean. She had no family, no money, no prospects. The realization must have shown on her face because Grant's expression gentled. Tell you what, he said. I've got a ranch about 10 miles outside town. It's not much yet, but I'm building it up. I could use help with the house, cooking, that sort of thing. I'd pay you fair wages, room and board separate. You'd be an employee, not a servant. You could save up, figure out what you want to do. Why would you do that? Willow asked, searching his face for some hidden motive, some catch that would make this make sense. Because I suspect you're a hard worker who's gotten a raw deal, Grant said simply. And because I believe in paying my debts. Your father saved my life. The least I can do is give his daughter a chance at hers. Behind her, Holloway snorted. She won't last a week. Never done ranch work in her life. Something in Willow sparked at that, a defiance that had been buried under exhaustion and hopelessness for too long. She straightened her spine and met Grant's eyes directly. I'm a hard worker, she said. I learn fast. If you're serious about the offer, I accept. A smile tugged at the corner of Grant's mouth, the first real expression she had seen from him. Good, go get your things. These are my things, Willow said, gesturing to her stained dress. Everything else she had owned had been sold long ago to pay down the debt. Grant's face darkened as he looked at Holloway, but he just nodded. Come on, then. We'll stop by the general store on the way out of town. Willow untied her apron with trembling fingers, folded it carefully, and set it on the bar. 2 years she had worn that apron. 2 years of 18-hour days, of dodging wandering hands and swallowing insults. of watching the sun rise and set through grimy windows while her youth drained away like whiskey from a cracked barrel. She walked around the bar and followed Grant toward the door. Just before they reached it, Holloway called out, "You'll be back, girl. Women like you always come back." Willow did not turn around. She stepped out into the blazing Kansas sun, and for the first time in 2 years, she walked down the wooden sidewalk of Newton as a free woman. Grant had a horse tied up outside, a sturdy bay gelding with intelligent eyes. He swung into the saddle easily and offered Willow his hand. She hesitated, suddenly aware of how strange this all was, how this man was essentially a stranger, and she was about to ride off with him to a ranch 10 miles from town. "I know this is a lot to take on faith," Grant said, reading her hesitation. "If you'd rather, I can arrange for you to stay at the boarding house in town for a few days, give you time to think it over." "No," Willow said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "No, I want to come with you. I just need a minute to believe this is real." "It's real," Grant assured her. His hand remained extended, steady and patient. Willow took it, and he pulled her up behind him with an easy strength. She had to wrap her arms around his waist to keep her balance, and she was suddenly conscious of how solid he felt, how warm. She could not remember the last time she had touched another person with anything other than the clinical distance required to serve drinks and avoid trouble. They stopped at the general store, where Grant bought her 2 simple dresses, one brown and one dark blue, along with a coat for when the weather turned, sturdy boots and various sundries she would need. The proprietor, Mrs. Chen, a Chinese woman who had managed to carve out a successful business despite the prejudice she faced, gave Willow a knowing look. "Good to see you out of that place, dear," she said quietly as she wrapped the dresses in brown paper. "Thank you," Willow managed. As they left Newton behind, heading west into the open prairie, Willow felt something unknot in her chest. The sky stretched endlessly above them, blue and vast and clean. The wind smelled of grass and earth instead of stale beer and unwashed bodies. She watched the town grow smaller behind them until it was just a smudge on the horizon. "You all right back there?" Grant asked after they had been riding for a while. "Yes," Willow said, and realized it was true. "I'm all right." The ranch, when they reached it as the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, was modest but well kept. There was a small house built of wood and sod, a barn that looked relatively new, and a corral where several horses grazed. Grant helped Willow down from the horse and led her inside. The house was simple, just 3 rooms. A main living area with a kitchen and table, a small bedroom, and a loft above. It was clean but clearly the domain of a man living alone, with boots by the door and a rifle over the fireplace. "You can have the bedroom," Grant said. "I'll sleep up in the loft." "I can't take your bed," Willow protested. "You can and you will," Grant said firmly. "It's just a place to sleep. Now, I figure you're probably tired and hungry. I'm not much of a cook, but I can manage some beans and cornbread if you want to rest." Willow shook her head. "I'd rather cook if you don't mind. I need to do something with my hands, or I think I might start believing this is all a dream." Grant nodded and showed her where everything was kept. The kitchen was basic but functional, with a good cast iron stove and sufficient supplies. Willow set about making dinner, finding comfort in the familiar motions of cooking. But this time, there was no Holloway breathing down her neck, no drunken customers grabbing at her as she passed. Just the quiet sounds of Grant tending to the horses outside and the peaceful settling of the house around her. They ate dinner in companionable silence as the last light faded from the sky. Grant was not much of a talker, Willow was discovering, but his silence was peaceful rather than oppressive. After they finished, he showed her how to work the pump for water and where the wash basin was, I'll be up early, he said. Got cattle to check on. You don't have to get up with me if you don't want to. Take some time to settle in. What time do you usually rise? Willow asked. Before dawn, usually. Then I'll be up to make you breakfast before you go. Grant looked at her steadily. You don't have to prove anything, you know. You've been working yourself to the bone for 2 years. It's all right to rest. I know, Willow said, but I want to earn my keep. You paid a lot of money for my freedom. The least I can do is hold up my end of our arrangement. The money doesn't matter, Grant said, his voice quiet but intense. What I did today, that wasn't a transaction. That was setting right something that was wrong. You don't owe me anything beyond what we agreed to, and I'll pay you fair wages for that. Willow felt tears prick at her eyes, the first tears she had allowed herself in months. Why are you being so kind to me? Grant was quiet for a long moment. I told you, your father saved my life. But that's not the whole truth. The truth is, I know what it's like to be trapped by circumstances beyond your control. I know what it's like to feel like you'll never be free. Someone gave me a chance once. I'm just passing it forward. He did not elaborate, and Willow did not push. Instead, she nodded and bid him good night, retreating to the small bedroom. It held a simple bed with a real mattress, not the lumpy pallet she had been sleeping on at the saloon, a washstand, and a chest of drawers. Willow changed into one of her new dresses to sleep in, carefully folding the saloon dress. She should probably burn it, but some part of her wanted to keep it as a reminder of where she had been and how far she had come. She lay in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the prairie night. Crickets sang, and somewhere far off, a coyote howled. Above her, she could hear the faint sounds of Grant moving around in the loft, settling in for the night. Despite the strangeness of it all, Willow felt safer than she had in years. She fell asleep with her hand curled under her cheek, breathing in the clean scent of the sheets. True to her word, Willow was up before dawn, stoking the fire in the stove and setting coffee to boil. She found eggs in the cold box and bacon hanging in the larder, and by the time Grant came down from the loft, she had a proper breakfast waiting. You didn't have to do all this, he said, but she could see the appreciation in his eyes. I told you I would, Willow replied, pouring him coffee. Besides, I like cooking when it's a choice rather than a demand. They fell into a routine over the following days. Grant would work the ranch from sunup to sundown, checking on his small herd of cattle, mending fences, breaking horses. Willow would tend the house, cook the meals, and start a vegetable garden in the plot behind the house. In the evenings, they would eat dinner together and sometimes talk, though Grant remained a man of few words. Willow learned that he had come to Kansas 5 years earlier with almost nothing, working as a ranch hand for a large outfit east of Newton. He had saved every penny, living rough and cheap, until he had enough to buy this land and start his own place. He had big dreams of building the ranch into something substantial, but he was patient, willing to grow slowly and steadily rather than overextend himself. That's how people lose everything, he explained one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. They want too much too fast and they end up in debt to the banks or worse. I'd rather build something that lasts. That's wise, Willow said. She was mending one of his shirts, her needle flashing in the fading light. My father was always chasing the next big thing, the next sure bet. He could never just be content with what he had. You miss him? Grant asked. Willow considered the question. I miss who he was before my mother died. He was different then, more careful. After she passed, it was like he couldn't stand to be still with his grief. He had to keep moving, keep trying to outrun it. Eventually, it caught up with him. I'm sorry, Grant said simply. So am I, Willow replied. As the weeks passed, Willow began to feel like a person again rather than just a pair of hands to work. Her skin, which had been pale from spending all her time indoors at the saloon, took on a healthy glow from her work in the garden. She gained back some of the weight she had lost, her curves filling out her dresses properly. She caught Grant looking at her sometimes with an expression she could not quite read, but he was always respectful, always careful to maintain proper boundaries. For her part, Willow found herself increasingly aware of Grant in ways that had nothing to do with gratitude. She noticed the way his shoulders stretched his shirt when he was working, the way his hands, calloused and strong, could be surprisingly gentle when he was handling a nervous horse. She liked the sound of his voice, low and steady, and the rare smiles he gave her that made his whole face transform. It was confusing and a little frightening. Willow had thought she was done with men after her experiences at the saloon, but Grant was different from any man she had ever known. He treated her like an equal, asked her opinions, listened when she spoke. He paid her wages every week without fail, counting out the money and placing it in her hand like it was his honor to do so. "You're saving it?" he asked one evening, noticing she had not spent any of the money on herself. "Yes," Willow said. "I figure I should have something set aside, just in case." "In case of what?" Grant asked, his brow furrowing. Willow shrugged, not quite meeting his eyes. "In case this doesn't work out, in case you change your mind about having me here." Grant set down his coffee cup carefully. "Willow, look at me." She did, reluctantly. "I'm not going to change my mind," he said firmly. "You've been here 2 months now and you've more than proven yourself. But even if you hadn't, even if you were the worst cook and housekeeper in Kansas, I wouldn't turn you out. I gave you my word that you'd have a place here as long as you wanted it, and I keep my word." "I know you do," Willow said quietly, "but I also know how quickly things can change. I thought my father would always take care of me, and then he died and left me with his debts. I thought Holloway would honor the terms of the contract, and he didn't. I just need to know I can take care of myself if I have to." Grant nodded slowly. "That's fair and smart, but I want you to know that you don't have to worry about that here. You're safe here, Willow. I promise you that." It was a promise Willow wanted desperately to believe. The summer heat gradually gave way to the cooler days of autumn. Willow harvested the vegetables from her garden, preserving and pickling for the winter ahead. Grant brought in a good price for some of his cattle at market, and used the money to buy supplies and materials to expand the barn. Everything was going smoothly until the day 3 men rode up to the ranch, just after noon. Willow was in the garden when she saw them coming, and something about the way they sat their horses made her uneasy. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked quickly to the house, finding Grant already standing on the porch, his rifle held casually but ready. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" he called out as they approached. The man in the lead was tall and thin, with a prominent Adam's apple and eyes that reminded Willow of a snake. The other 2 were rougher looking, clearly hired muscle. "Name's Crane," the thin man said. "I'm here on behalf of Marcus Holloway." Willow's blood rang cold. "What does Holloway want?" Grant asked, his voice level but hard. "He wants his property back," Crane said, his eyes sliding to Willow. "That girl there. Turns out the debt wasn't paid in full. There were additional expenses that Mr. Holloway neglected to mention. He's willing to be reasonable about it, though. You give us the girl and we'll call it square." "The debt was paid in full," Grant said. "I have witnesses that I paid $300, which was the amount Holloway stated." "Well, Mr. Holloway has reconsidered," Crane said with an oily smile. "Turns out there was interest owed on the original debt. Another $200 ought to cover it." "That's extortion," Grant said flatly. "That's business," Crane replied. "Now, Are you going to hand over the girl, or are we going to have a problem? Grant raised his rifle slightly. We're going to have a problem. The two men behind Crane reached for their guns, but Grant was faster. He fired a shot that kicked up dirt right in front of Crane's horse, making the animal rear. The other men fought to control their own mounts as Grant worked the lever on his rifle, chambering another round. Next one won't be a warning, Grant said. Now get off my land. You're making a mistake, Crane said, his face flushed with anger as he got his horse under control. Mr. Holloway doesn't like being crossed. I don't much care what Holloway likes, Grant replied. That contract was fulfilled and destroyed. Willow Vance is a free woman and she's under my protection now. You come back here and I'll shoot you for trespassing. Now ride. The three men exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. But Grant stood there like a statue, his rifle steady, and after a long, tense moment, they turned their horses and rode off. Willow realized she had been holding her breath. She let it out in a shaky exhale as Grant lowered his rifle and turned to her. "You all right?" he asked. "Yes," she managed. "But Grant, what if they come back? What if Holloway sends more men?" "Then I'll deal with it," Grant said grimly. He set the rifle down and walked over to her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "Willow, listen to me. I meant what I said. You're under my protection. I won't let Holloway or anyone else take you." "But why?" Willow asked, her voice cracking. "Why are you willing to fight for me? You barely know me." Grant's hands tightened slightly on her shoulders, and for a moment something flashed in his eyes, something intense and raw. "Because you deserve to be free. Because what Holloway did was wrong. And because I care about what happens to you." The admission hung in the air between them. Willow stared up at him, her heart pounding, and saw her own confused feelings reflected in his face. Without thinking, she stepped closer, and Grant's hands slid from her shoulders to her back, drawing her into an embrace that felt like coming home. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other. Willow could hear Grant's heart beating strong and steady beneath her ear, could feel the warmth of him seeping into her bones. When they finally pulled apart, both of them seemed shaken. "I should go into town," Grant said, his voice rough. "Talk to the sheriff, let him know what happened. Holloway can't be allowed to get away with this." "Will the sheriff help?" Willow asked doubtfully. Lawmen in her experience tended to side with men like Holloway who had money and influence. "Sheriff Daniels is a decent man," Grant said. "He'll listen at least. And I want it on record that Holloway sent men out here making threats." Willow nodded, though she was not entirely convinced. "I'll come with you." "No," Grant said firmly. "It's safer if you stay here. I won't be long." Willow wanted to argue, but she could see the determination in his face. Instead, she just nodded and watched as he saddled his horse and rode toward Newton. The hours while he was gone were some of the longest of Willow's life. She tried to keep busy, but her mind kept racing with worst-case scenarios. What if the sheriff sided with Holloway? What if Crane and his men ambushed Grant on the road? What if she had brought nothing but trouble to this good man who had shown her kindness? It was nearly dark when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Willow grabbed the rifle Grant had left, her hands shaking, and peered out the window. Relief flooded through her when she recognized Grant's silhouette in the fading light. He came inside looking tired but satisfied. "Sheriff Daniels is going to have a talk with Holloway. He said what Crane did was illegal, trying to collect on a debt that had been paid. He's going to make it clear that if Holloway bothers us again, there will be consequences." "Do you think that will stop him?" Willow asked. "I don't know," Grant admitted, "but it's something. And I also stopped by the land office and filed paperwork to make you my business partner. The ranch is now officially half yours." Willow's jaw dropped. "You did what?" "I put the ranch in both our names," Grant said calmly. That way you have legal standing independent of me. If anything happens to me, you won't be left with nothing. And it makes it clear that you're not an employee or a dependent. You're a partner. But Grant, this is your ranch. You built this from nothing. I can't just take half of it. You're not taking anything. I'm giving it to you, Grant said. Willow, you've worked hard here. You've made this place feel like a home instead of just a house. You've earned this. Besides, I've been thinking about expansion, maybe getting some more cattle, building a bigger barn. Having a partner makes sense. Willow felt tears streaming down her face before she even realized she was crying. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay, Grant said softly. Say you'll help me build this place into something real. I'll stay, Willow whispered. As long as you'll have me. Grant reached out and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumbs. That might be a very long time, he said, his voice low and intimate. Good, Willow replied. They stood there in the gathering darkness, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Willow could feel herself trembling, not from fear but from the intensity of her emotions. She had not felt this alive, this present, since before her mother died. Willow, Grant said, his voice rough. I need to tell you something. What is it? She asked. I didn't just buy your contract because I owed your father. I mean, that was part of it, but not all of it. He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. I'd seen you before at the saloon. I'd stopped in there a few times over the past year when I came to town for supplies. I'd seen how Holloway treated you, how hard you worked, how you kept your dignity even when men around you had none. I asked around, found out about your father's debt. I was already planning to help when I heard Thomas had died and left you in that situation. Willow's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Why didn't you say something sooner? Because I didn't want you to feel obligated to me. I didn't want you to think that I had some ulterior motive. I wanted you to feel free to leave if you wanted to know that you had choices. Grant's hands were still on her face, his thumbs tracing gentle circles on her cheeks. But I can't keep pretending that I don't feel something for you. These past few months, having you here, getting to know you, watching you come back to life after everything you've been through. I care about you, Willow. More than I should, probably. More than is wise, but I can't help it. Grant, Willow breathed, her hands coming up to cover his. I care about you too. I've been trying not to, trying to tell myself it was just gratitude or that I was confused, but it's not that. You make me feel safe. You make me feel valued. When you look at me, I don't feel like a burden or a commodity. I feel like a person, like I matter. You do matter, Grant said fiercely. You matter so much, Willow. He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but Willow did not want to pull away. She wanted this, wanted him, with an intensity that surprised her. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, tentative, like he was afraid she might break. But Willow pressed closer, her arms wrapping around his neck, and the kiss deepened, becoming something hungry and desperate and real. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Grant rested his forehead against hers, his hands tangled in her hair. I want to do this right, he said. I want to court you properly. I want people to respect you, not think you're just some woman I keep around. Willow laughed, a little breathless. I think that ship may have sailed when you put the ranch in my name. I'm serious, Grant said. You deserve to be treated like a lady, not like property. I want to marry you, Willow. Not right away, not until you're ready. But someday, when you feel the same way I do, I want to make you my wife. Willow pulled back enough to look into his eyes. I feel the same way now, she said simply. I love you, Grant Oliver. I think I've been falling in love with you since the day you tore up that contract. The smile that spread across Grant's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He kissed her again, and this time there was joy in it, a sense of rightness that made Willow's heart soar. They spent the evening talking, really talking, sharing stories and dreams and fears. Grant told her about his childhood in Missouri, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 16 and making his way west. Willow told him about her mother, about the good years before the sickness took her, about how much she had loved to sing. "Will you sing for me sometime?" Grant asked. "Maybe," Willow said, feeling suddenly shy. "I haven't sung in years." "No pressure," Grant assured her, "but I'd like to hear you someday." As the night grew late, they reluctantly parted, Grant climbing up to his loft and Willow retiring to the bedroom. But Willow lay awake for hours, her fingers touching her lips where Grant had kissed her, marveling at the change in her circumstances. Just a few months ago, she had been trapped in a nightmare with no way out. Now she was half owner of a ranch, and the man she was falling in love with wanted to marry her. It seemed too good to be true, and that worried her. In her experience, when things seemed too good to be true, they usually were. The next few weeks passed in a haze of happiness. Grant courted Willow with old-fashioned gentleness, bringing her wildflowers he picked on his rides, reading to her in the evenings from the few books he owned, teaching her to ride so she could accompany him around the ranch. They worked side by side during the day and sat close together in the evenings, talking and planning for the future. Grant wanted to get married before winter set in, and Willow agreed. There was no point in waiting when they both knew what they wanted. They planned a simple ceremony in Newton, just the two of them and whoever wanted to attend from town. But first, they had to deal with Marcus Holloway. The saloon owner had apparently not been deterred by the sheriff's warning. Word reached them through Mrs. Chen at the general store that Holloway was spreading rumors about Willow, saying she had stolen money from him, that she was a whore who had seduced Grant Oliver into buying her contract. The rumors were vicious and designed to damage both their reputations. Grant wanted to confront Holloway directly, but Willow convinced him that would only make things worse. Instead, she suggested a different approach. "Let's get married right away," she said. "Not in a few weeks, but now, tomorrow. Once I'm your wife, once we're legally bound, it will be harder for him to spread lies about me, and it will show everyone in Newton that you respect me enough to marry me." Grant considered this. "Are you sure? I wanted to give you a proper wedding, not some rushed ceremony." "I don't need proper," Willow said. "I just need you." So the next day they rode into Newton together and went straight to the church. Reverend Matthews, a kindly older man who had always treated Willow with compassion during her time at the saloon, agreed to marry them on the spot. Mrs. Chen and her husband served as witnesses, and within an hour, Willow Vance became Willow Oliver. They were walking out of the church, Willow's hand tucked into the crook of Grant's arm when they came face to face with Marcus Holloway. The saloon owner was standing across the street, his face purple with rage. "You think this changes anything?" he shouted. "You think I don't know what you are, girl? You're nothing but a saloon whore playing at being respectable." Grant's hand went to his gun, but Willow tightened her grip on his arm. "Don't," she said quietly. "He's not worth it." "Listen to your whore wife," Holloway sneered. "She knows her place." "My place," Willow said, her voice ringing out clear and strong, "is at my husband's side as his equal partner. I own half of a ranch. I'm a married woman with standing in this community. What are you, Mr. Holloway? A man who tried to cheat a grieving woman out of more money than she owed, who sent armed men to threaten peaceful citizens. The sheriff knows what you did. Everyone in town knows what you did. You have no power over me anymore." A small crowd had gathered, and Willow could see people nodding, could see the shift in public opinion. Holloway could see it too, and his face went from purple to white. "This isn't over," he hissed. "Yes, it is," Grant said firmly. "You come near my wife again, you say one more word against her name, and I will take legal action. The sheriff has already warned you once. Don't make me involve the territorial judge." Holloway looked between them, clearly trying to calculate his next move. But there was nothing he could do, and he knew it. With a final glare, he turned and stalked back toward his saloon. The crowd dispersed, and Mrs. Cheng came over to embrace Willow. "Well done, dear," she said warmly. "It's about time someone stood up to that bully." "Thank you," Willow said, feeling shaky now that the confrontation was over. "For everything. For being our witness, for being kind to me when others weren't." "You're a good woman," Mrs. Chen said. "I'm glad you found happiness." Grant and Willow rode back to the ranch in the late afternoon sun, the marriage certificate safely tucked in Grant's vest pocket. When they arrived home, Grant dismounted first and then lifted Willow down from her horse, holding her perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "So, Mrs. Oliver," he said, his eyes warm. "How does it feel to be married?" "Right," Willow said simply. "It feels right." Grant carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing at the tradition. But once inside, the laughter faded into something more serious, more intimate. They had been so careful with each other up until now, so respectful of boundaries. But they were married now, and the day's events had left them both feeling raw and vulnerable and desperately in need of connection. "Willow," Grant said, his voice rough, "we don't have to rush anything. I know this has all happened fast." Willow reached up and pulled his face down to hers, kissing him with all the love and passion she felt. "I want this," she whispered against his lips. "I want you. I want to be your wife in every way." What followed was tender and sweet, and sometimes awkward, as first times often are, but it was theirs. Grant was patient and gentle, checking in with her constantly to make sure she was all right, and Willow marveled at the intimacy of it, at how different it felt to be with someone who loved her, who saw her as a person rather than an object. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, Willow's head on Grant's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow and steady beneath her ear. "I love you," Grant said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I know I've said it before, but I need you to know I mean it. This isn't just about obligation or debt or even attraction. I genuinely love who you are, Willow. Your strength, your resilience, your kindness. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Willow felt tears sting her eyes. "I love you too," she said. "You saved me, Grant. Not just from Holloway, but from giving up on myself. You made me remember that I'm worth something." "You've always been worth something," Grant said fiercely. "Always. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget that." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time in years, Willow felt completely safe, completely at peace. The winter came on cold and hard, but the ranch house was warm and cozy. Grant had spent the fall preparing, stocking up on supplies, making sure they had enough hay for the horses and feed for the cattle. Willow had put up vegetables and made preserves, and together they settled into the rhythm of married life. Some days were easier than others. There were times when Willow would wake from nightmares about being back at the saloon, about Holloway coming to drag her away. Grant would hold her on those nights, talking quietly until the fear subsided. And there were days when Grant would come in from a hard day's work frustrated with the endless challenges of running a ranch, and Willow would listen patiently and help him work through problems. But mostly, they were happy. They learned each other's rhythms and quirks, learned to communicate without words sometimes, just a look or a touch conveying understanding. They worked as a true partnership, making decisions together, supporting each other's ideas. In December, Willow realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had not wanted to say anything until she was sure. When she told Grant, his face lit up with such pure joy that Willow started crying. "A baby," he said wonderingly. placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Willow asked, even though she could see that he was. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," Grant said. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "You've given me so much, Willow. A home, a partnership, love, and now a child. I don't know what I did to deserve all this, but I'm grateful for it every single day." They spent the winter preparing for the baby, Grant building a cradle by the fire and Willow sewing tiny clothes from scraps of fabric. Mrs. Chen sent over baby things with every supply trip to town, refusing payment and insisting it was her pleasure to help. The rumors about Willow had died down in Newton, especially after it became clear that she and Grant were genuinely in love and building a solid life together. Even some of the men who had been customers at the Red Garter treated her with respect now when they encountered her in town, tipping their hats and calling her Mrs. Oliver. Marcus Halloway had left Newton shortly after their confrontation, selling the Red Garter to a man named Coleman, who ran a much more respectable establishment. Word was Halloway had gambling debts of his own and had fled to avoid his creditors. Willow felt a sense of poetic justice in that. Spring came late but glorious, painting the prairie in wildflowers. Willow's pregnancy progressed smoothly, and in late April she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Grant was with her through the whole ordeal, holding her hand and encouraging her, and when the midwife placed their son in Willow's arms, she saw tears streaming down her husband's face. "He's perfect," Grant said, his voice choked with emotion. "You're perfect. Thank you, Willow. Thank you for this gift." They named the baby Thomas, after Willow's father. It felt right to honor the man whose mistakes had inadvertently brought them together. Little Thomas had Grant's green eyes and a shock of dark hair, and from his first breath, he had a healthy set of lungs that he was not afraid to use. The next few months were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Willow had never been so tired in her life, but she had also never been so content. Watching Grant with their son filled her heart to overflowing. He was a natural father, patient and gentle, singing nonsense songs to soothe the baby and walking the floor with him at night so Willow could sleep. The ranch continued to prosper. Grant hired a hand to help with the work, a young man named Peter who was respectful and hardworking. With the extra help, Grant was able to expand the herd and start planning for a bigger house, one with proper bedrooms and a parlor. On their first anniversary, Grant gave Willow a beautiful music box that played a waltz. "I know it's not much," he said, "but I remembered you said your mother had one like this." Willow opened the box with trembling hands, and the familiar melody brought tears to her eyes. "How did you remember that?" she asked. "I remember everything you tell me," Grant said simply. "You're my wife, the mother of my child, my partner in everything. Of course I remember." They danced in the kitchen to the music box, Thomas sleeping peacefully in his cradle, and Willow thought about how far she had come. From indentured servant to ranch owner, from a woman who thought she had no future to a wife and mother building a life she loved. "What are you thinking about?" Grant asked, noticing the distant look in her eyes. "Just how grateful I am," Willow said, "for all of this. For you." "I'm the grateful one," Grant insisted. "You took a chance on me on this life. You could have said no that day, could have chosen to stay in town, make your own way. But you trusted me." "Best decision I ever made," Willow said, rising on her tiptoes to kiss him. The years that followed were not without challenges. There were droughts and hard winters, cattle lost to disease, and the constant financial pressure of running a ranch. But Grant and Willow faced it all together, their partnership growing stronger with each obstacle they overcame. Thomas grew into a lively, curious little boy with his father's quiet strength and his mother's resilience. When he was 3, Willow gave birth to a daughter they named Rose, after Willow's mother. 2 years after that came another son, Samuel. The house Grant built was filled with laughter and noise and love. Willow started teaching Rose and Thomas their letters, using the books Grant had slowly accumulated over the years. She was determined that her children would have the education she had never received, the opportunities that had been denied to her. Grant expanded the ranch steadily, never overextending but always looking for smart ways to grow. He earned a reputation as a fair man and a shrewd businessman, someone whose word could be trusted. Willow managed the household and the books, her head for numbers making her an invaluable partner in running the ranch. They made trips to Newton regularly, and Willow was always touched by how warmly they were received. Mrs. Chen had become a dear friend, and even Sheriff Daniels, now getting on in years, always made a point of greeting them kindly. On one such trip, when Thomas was about 8 and Rose was 5. They ran into one of the women who had worked at the Red Garter during Willow's time there. Her name was Betty, and she looked worn and tired, though she was probably only in her mid-30s. "Willow," she said uncertainly, as if not quite believing her eyes. "Willow Vance." "It's Willow Oliver now," Willow said gently. "It's good to see you, Betty. How are you?" Betty's eyes filled with tears. "I'm all right. Still working for Coleman at the saloon, but he's a decent man at least, better than Holloway was." Her gaze drifted to the children holding Willow's hands, then to Grant standing protectively nearby. "You did well for yourself. I'm glad. You deserved better than what you got." "Thank you," Willow said. An idea occurred to her and she glanced at Grant, who gave her a small nod of understanding. "Betty, do you know how to cook? Clean house?" "Of course," Betty said, looking confused. "Why?" "We could use some help at the ranch," Willow said. "Especially with the children getting bigger and needing more attention. The pay is fair, room and board included, and it's respectable work, if you're interested." Betty stared at her for a long moment, then burst into tears. "You do that for me, after all this time?" "I remember what it's like to feel trapped," Willow said. "I remember what it's like to need someone to give you a chance. If you want it, the job is yours." Betty came to work for them the following week and proved to be a godsend. She was wonderful with the children and quickly became part of the family. Willow taught her to read and write in the evenings, and Betty blossomed under the care and respect, much as Willow had. One evening, as Willow was putting Rose to bed, her daughter asked, "Mama, why did you help Miss Betty?" Willow thought about how to answer. "Because someone helped me once, when I needed it most. Your father gave me a chance when I had nothing, when most people had given up on me. He taught me that kindness matters, that one person can make a difference in another person's life. So when I see someone who needs help, I try to do for them what was done for me." "Because Papa loves you?" Rose asked. "Yes," Willow said, tucking the blankets around her daughter. "Because your Papa loves me and I love him, and that love makes us want to be better people. It makes us want to help others. I want to be like that when I grow up," Rose declared. "I think you will be," Willow said, kissing her forehead. "I think you'll be even better." As the children grew older, the ranch prospered even more. Grant and Willow expanded into horse breeding, discovering that the horses they raised were in high demand for their temperament and strength. Thomas showed a natural talent for working with the animals, spending hours with his father learning the trade. Rose inherited her mother's head for numbers, and often helped Willow with the account books, her tongue poking out in concentration as she carefully noted expenses and income. Samuel, the youngest, was the dreamer of the family, always full of questions about the wider world beyond their ranch. On their 10th anniversary, Grant surprised Willow with a trip to Wichita, arranging for Betty to watch the children. It was the first time they had been alone together since Samuel was born, and it felt like a honeymoon. They stayed in a real hotel with indoor plumbing and gas lights, ate at restaurants, and walked arm in arm through the streets like courting couples. On their last evening, Grant took Willow to a theater, where they saw a traveling performance of a Shakespeare play. Sitting in the darkened theater, Willow felt Grant take her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers. She looked over at him, at this man who had changed her entire life, and felt overwhelmed with love. "What is it?" Grant whispered, noticing her looking at him. "I was just thinking about how lucky I am," Willow whispered back. "How different my life could have been." Grant raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I'm the lucky one," he said. "You made me a better man, Willow. You gave me a reason to build something that matters." After the play, they walked back to the hotel under the stars. The night was warm and clear, and Willow felt young again, like the girl she had been before life got hard. "Do you ever regret it?" Grant asked suddenly. "Marrying me, I mean. Coming to the ranch instead of making your own way in town or going somewhere else." Willow stopped walking and turned to face him. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for one single moment, Grant. You gave me freedom, but more than that, you gave me partnership. You've never treated me as less than you, never made me feel like I owed you. You made me your equal in every way that matters. How could I possibly regret that?" Grant pulled her close, right there on the street, and kissed her deeply. When they broke apart, he was smiling. "Good," he said. "Because I plan to keep you around for a very long time, Mrs. Oliver." They returned to the ranch refreshed and reconnected, throwing themselves back into the busy life of raising children and running a successful operation. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Thomas fell in love with a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread and married her when he was 22. Grant and Willow helped them build a house on the far side of their land, expanding the ranch to accommodate the next generation. Rose announced at 16 that she wanted to go to college back east and study mathematics. Grant was hesitant, worried about his daughter traveling so far, but Willow encouraged it. "Let her have the opportunities we didn't," she told her husband. "Let her see what she can become." So they sent Rose off with tears and pride, and she wrote faithfully every week, filling her letters with descriptions of her classes and the exciting things she was learning. She came home every summer and regaled them with stories of city life, though she always seemed happy to return to the wide, open spaces of Kansas. Samuel decided he wanted to be a veterinarian and apprenticed with the doctor in Newton who treated both humans and animals. He eventually took over the practice when the old doctor retired, and became known throughout the region for his skill and compassion. As Willow and Grant grew older, their hair graying and lines deepening on their faces, they would often sit together on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the prairie. Grant had built Willow a proper porch swing, and it became their favorite spot. "Do you remember the first time I saw you?" Grant asked one evening when they were both in their early 50s. "Really saw you, I mean, not just as a woman working at the saloon." "Tell me," Willow said, even though she had heard the story before. She never tired of hearing how Grant had fallen in love with her. "It was about a year before your father died," Grant said. "I came into the Red Garter to get out of a rainstorm. You were serving drinks and some drunk cowboy grabbed you, said something crude. You looked him right in the eye and told him if he touched you again, you'd break his fingers with a bottle. You said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, that he actually believed you and let go." Willow laughed. "I remember that. Holloway was furious with me for threatening a paying customer." "I thought you were the bravest woman I'd ever seen," Grant continued. "Beautiful too, but it was the courage that got me. You were trapped in an awful situation, but you hadn't let it break you. You still had fire in you. I wanted to help you then, but I didn't know how." I didn't think you'd trust some stranger offering help." "You were probably right," Willow admitted. "I was pretty suspicious of everyone back then." "So I waited," Grant said. "I asked around, learned about your father's debts, tried to figure out how I could help without making you feel like charity. And then, when Thomas died and Holloway increased your indenture, I knew I had to act. I couldn't stand the thought of you being trapped there for years more." "My hero," Willow teased gently, but her eyes were wet. "No," Grant said seriously. "You're the hero of this story, Willow. I just gave you an opportunity. You're the one who had the courage to take it, to trust me, to build this life with me. Everything we have, we built together." Willow leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of him, this man who had been her partner for over 30 years. "We did build something good, didn't we?" she said. "The best," Grant agreed. They had grandchildren now. Thomas's children and eventually Rose's too, when she married a professor and settled in Kansas City. The ranch house was always full of noise when the grandchildren visited, and Grant and Willow reveled in it, spoiling the little ones shamelessly. Betty had married Peter, the ranch hand, and they had built a small house on the edge of the property. Their children had grown up alongside Grant and Willow's, creating an extended family that supported and cared for one another. When Grant was 63, he took ill with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. For a few terrifying weeks, Willow thought she might lose him, and she realized with crystal clarity that she was not ready to face the world without him. She sat by his bedside day and night, forcing him to drink broth and tea, changing cool cloths on his forehead, praying with an intensity she had not felt since she was a girl. "You can't leave me," she told him fiercely during one of his more lucid moments. "We have a deal, Grant Oliver. We're partners, and partners don't abandon each other." Grant managed a weak smile. "Not planning to go anywhere," he whispered. "Still got too much to do here." He pulled through, though it took months for him to fully recover his strength. The illness had scared them both, made them realize that their time was finite, precious. They began making plans for the future of the ranch, deciding that Thomas would eventually take over the main operation while Samuel and Rose would retain ownership stakes. "I want to make sure everything is fair," Grant explained to Willow. "All three of them have contributed to this place in different ways. Thomas with his labor and skill, Rose with her business sense when she visits and helps with the books, Samuel with his care of our animals and the community." "You're a good father," Willow said. "A good man." "I try to be," Grant replied. "I had a good teacher." Willow looked at him questioningly, and he smiled. "You," he said, "you taught me what it means to be truly equal partners, to respect and value each other. You taught me that love isn't about control or ownership. It's about supporting each other, lifting each other up, being better together than you could ever be apart." On their 40th anniversary, their children and grandchildren threw them a celebration that brought together people from all over the county. The ranch was decorated with ribbons and flowers, tables groaned under the weight of food, and a fiddler played dancing music. As Willow looked around at all the people gathered, she marveled at the community they had built. There was Thomas with his wife and 4 children, Rose with her professor husband and their 2 daughters, Samuel with his fiancée, Betty and Peter and their grown children. Mrs. Chen, now quite elderly but still sharp as a tack, had made the trip from Newton. Sheriff Daniels had passed away, but his son, who had taken over as sheriff, was there with his family. Grant led Willow onto the makeshift dance floor, and everyone cleared space for them. As they waltzed to the fiddler's tune, Willow felt like she was floating. She was 60 years old, her hair completely silver, her hands weathered from years of work, but in Grant's arms she felt ageless. 40 years, Grant said, his voice full of wonder. 40 years since I married the love of my life. Best 40 years of my life, Willow replied. Thank you, Grant, for seeing me when I was invisible, for freeing me when I was trapped, for loving me when I thought I was unlovable. You were never unlovable, Grant said. You were always worthy of love, always deserving of respect. I just had the good fortune to recognize it. They danced until the sun began to set, surrounded by the family they had created and the life they had built together. Later, when the guests had gone and the house was quiet again, they sat on their porch swing, holding hands and watching the stars come out. Do you ever think about that day? Willow asked. The day you walked into the Red Garter and changed everything. All the time, Grant admitted. Best decision I ever made, paying that debt. Best $300 I ever spent. It was more than $300, Willow pointed out. You gave me half the ranch, remember? And I'd do it again in a heartbeat, Grant said. You earned every bit of that and more. This place wouldn't be what it is without you, Willow. I wouldn't be who I am without you. Willow rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the gentle sway of the swing, the cool evening breeze on her face, the solid presence of the man she loved beside her. She thought about the girl she had been, scrubbing tables in a saloon and thinking her life was over. She thought about all the twists and turns that had brought her to this moment. I'm glad my father saved you that day, she said quietly. I'm glad you found me. I'm glad you were brave enough to offer me freedom and wise enough to offer me partnership along with it. I'm glad you were brave enough to accept, Grant replied. They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments to navigate together. But tonight, they simply sat together, two people who had started as strangers and become each other's home. As the years continued to pass, Grant and Willow settled into the rhythm of elder life. They still worked the ranch, but more in an advisory capacity, letting Thomas and the younger generation handle the physical labor. They spent their time with grandchildren, took slow rides around the property, and maintained the house and garden. Willow had started writing down her story, encouraged by Rose, who thought it was important to preserve the family history. At first, Willow had been reluctant, not sure anyone would care about the tale of a saloon girl who got lucky. But as she wrote, she realized it was more than that. It was a story about resilience, about second chances, about the power of one person's kindness to change another person's entire life. Grant would sit with her while she wrote, offering details she had forgotten or providing his perspective on events. They discovered that even after all these years, they still had new things to learn about each other, new stories to share. On a warm spring day when Willow was 68 and Grant was 71, they took a ride together out to the place where Grant had first brought her all those years ago. The land had changed, dotted now with outbuildings and fences, but the wide sweep of prairie was the same. They dismounted and stood together, looking out over the ranch they had built. We did good, didn't we? Grant said, his arm around Willow's waist. We did better than good, Willow replied. We did extraordinary. Grant turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face the way he had done countless times over the years. His green eyes, still bright despite his age, looked into hers with the same love she had seen on their wedding day. I love you, Willow Oliver, he said. I have loved you from the moment I saw you stand up to that drunk cowboy. I loved you when I tore up that contract. I loved you when you became my wife. I loved you when you gave me children. I love you now, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. Willow felt tears streaming down her face. I love you too, Grant. You gave me everything. A home, a family, dignity, purpose. But most of all, you gave me yourself, and that was the greatest gift of all. They kissed there on the prairie, two old people who had loved each other through decades of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "Come on," Grant said. "Let's go home. I think Betty mentioned something about making your favorite pie for dinner." Hand in hand, they walked back to their horses and rode home together, just as they had done so many times before. The sun was warm on their backs, and the prairie stretched endlessly around them, full of possibility and promise. That evening, surrounded by their children and grandchildren who had come for Sunday dinner, Willow looked around the table and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. Grant caught her eye from the other end of the table and winked at her, and she smiled back, a private communication between two people who knew each other inside and out. After dinner, as was their custom, Grant and Willow retired to the porch while the younger generation cleaned up. The grandchildren ran around the yard, their laughter filling the air. The sun was setting in brilliant shades of orange and pink, painting the sky in colors that seemed too beautiful to be real. "You know what I was thinking," Willow said, settling into the porch swing beside Grant. "What's that?" Grant asked, putting his arm around her. "I was thinking about how I used to believe my life was over when I was 20 years old, working at that saloon. I thought I had nothing to look forward to, no future worth hoping for. I couldn't have imagined this." She gestured to the scene before them. "All of this. The ranch, the children, the grandchildren. Life has a way of surprising us," Grant said. "I certainly never imagined I'd walk into a saloon one day and meet the woman who would become my whole world." "Your whole world," Willow teased. "That's a lot of pressure." "You can handle it," Grant said with a smile. "You're the strongest person I know, Willow. You survived things that would have broken most people. You built a life from nothing. You raised amazing children. You made this ranch successful. You made me a better man just by being you." "We made each other better," Willow corrected. "That's what love does. It doesn't just save you, it transforms you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky darken and the first stars appear. Inside the house, someone started playing the piano, probably Rose teaching one of her daughters a new song. The music drifted out through the open windows, mingling with the sounds of the prairie night. "Grant," Willow said softly. "Yes, love, thank you for everything. For seeing me, for freeing me, for making me your equal, for loving me. Thank you for giving me a life worth living." Grant tightened his arm around her and kissed the top of her head. "The pleasure has been all mine," he said. "Every single day with you has been a gift." As the years continued to roll by, Grant and Willow remained each other's constant companions. They celebrated the marriages of their grandchildren, welcomed great-grandchildren, and watched their ranch continue to prosper under Thomas's capable leadership. When Willow was 75, she finished writing her memoir. Rose arranged to have it published, and to everyone's surprise, it became quite popular, especially among women who found inspiration in Willow's story of survival and transformation. Willow received letters from women all over the country, thanking her for sharing her story, telling her how it had given them courage to leave bad situations or pursue their dreams. She answered every letter personally, offering encouragement and support. Grant was enormously proud of her, showing the book to everyone who visited and insisting they buy a copy. "That's my wife," he would say, beaming. "Isn't she something?" On their 50th anniversary, the entire family gathered again for a celebration even bigger than the 40th had been. There were speeches and toasts, laughter and tears. Thomas raised his glass and said, "To my parents, who showed me what true partnership looks like, who taught me that marriage is about respect and equality, not just love. You built something lasting and we're all the better for it." Rose added, "You taught me that a woman can be anything she wants to be, that she doesn't have to choose between love and independence. You can have both. You showed me that, Samuel finished. You taught me compassion, patience, and the importance of community. You showed me that success isn't just measured in money or land, but in the lives you touch and the love you share. Grant and Willow sat together, holding hands and crying happy tears as their children honored them. Later, when they were alone again, Grant said, "We did all right, didn't we?" "As parents, I mean." "We did more than all right," Willow assured him. "We raised good people who are raising good people. We created a legacy of love and respect. What more could we ask for?" As they entered their 80s, both Grant and Willow slowed down considerably. Grant's joints ached from years of hard work, and Willow's eyes weren't as sharp as they used to be. But they still took their evening sits on the porch, still held hands as they walked slowly around the property, still kissed each other good night every evening. One autumn evening, when the leaves were turning gold and the air had that crisp quality that promised winter was coming, Grant and Willow sat on their beloved porch swing. Grant had been quieter than usual all day, and Willow sensed something was on his mind. "What is it?" she asked gently. Grant was silent for a moment, then said, "I was just thinking about how grateful I am. For every day we've had together, for every moment. I don't have any regrets, Willow, not a single one." "Neither do I," Willow said, squeezing his hand. "We've had a good life, Grant, a very good life." "The best," Grant agreed. He looked at her, his eyes soft with love. "If I could go back and do it all again, I wouldn't change a thing, except maybe I would have walked into that saloon sooner, given us even more time together." Willow laughed softly. "We've had 52 years. That's more than many people get." "It's not enough," Grant said. "A lifetime with you wouldn't be enough, but I'll take whatever time we have left and be grateful for it." They sat together as the sun set, wrapped in a blanket against the cooling air, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. Grant's breathing was steady and peaceful, and Willow matched her breath to his, finding comfort in their synchronicity. The seasons continued their endless cycle. Grant and Willow celebrated their 55th anniversary surrounded by family. At 83, Grant was still sharp as a tack, though his body was failing him in small ways. Willow, at 80, was still writing, still corresponding with women who had read her book, still finding new ways to help others. They spent their days in quiet companionship, reading to each other, reminiscing about their life together, playing with great-grandchildren who visited. They had long conversations about everything and nothing, still discovering new facets of each other after all these years. One spring morning, Willow woke to find Grant still sleeping beside her. He looked peaceful, a slight smile on his face, and for a moment she just watched him, this man who had been her everything for over half a century. "I love you," she whispered, not wanting to wake him but needing to say it. Grant's eyes fluttered open and his smile widened. "I love you too," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning, beautiful." "Still a charmer after all these years," Willow said, though she was pleased. "Just telling the truth," Grant replied. He reached out and tucked a strand of her silver hair behind her ear. "You're still the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." They got up slowly, helping each other dress and make their way to the kitchen where Betty, now also elderly but still spry, had breakfast waiting. The three of them ate together, talking about plans for the day, which mostly involved sitting in the sun and watching the world go by. As the day wore on, Grant seemed more tired than usual. He napped in his chair after lunch, and when he woke, he seemed disoriented for a moment before his eyes found Willow and cleared. "There you are," he said softly. "For a moment I couldn't remember where I was, but then I saw you and I knew I was home." Willow felt a chill of premonition, but she pushed it aside. "I'm right here," she assured him. "I'm always right here." That evening they sat on the porch swing as usual, but Grant seemed contemplative, more so than usual. "Willow," he said, "I want you to promise me something." "Anything," Willow replied. "When I'm gone, I want you to keep living. Really living, not just existing. Keep writing, keep helping people, keep being the amazing woman you are. Don't let grief shrink your world." "Grant, don't talk like that," Willow said, her voice catching. "We're in our 80s, love," Grant said gently. "We have to talk about it sometime, and I need to know you'll be all right." "I don't know if I will be," Willow admitted. "You're my other half, Grant. I don't know how to be me without you." "You were you before me," Grant reminded her. "You were strong and brave and resilient. You'll be all those things after me too. And you won't be alone. You have the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. You have Betty and Peter. You have a whole community who loves and respects you." "But none of them are you," Willow whispered. Grant pulled her close, and they sat together in the growing darkness. "I'm not planning to go anywhere soon," he said. "But when the time comes, whenever that is, I need to know you'll honor our partnership by continuing to live fully." "Can you promise me that?" Willow thought about it, about what Grant was really asking. He wanted her to promise to survive losing him, to not let grief destroy her. It seemed like an impossible promise, but for him, she would try. "I promise," she said, "but you have to promise me something too." "What's that?" Grant asked. "Promise me you'll wait for me," Willow said. "Wherever we go after this, promise you'll wait for me there." "I'll wait for you," Grant promised, "for as long as it takes." They kissed then, a sweet, gentle kiss that tasted of tears and love and 55 years of shared life. When they pulled apart, both were crying. "I love you so much," Willow said, "more than I have words for." "I know," Grant said. "I feel the same way." Grant lived another 3 years. Years filled with gentle days and peaceful nights. He got to see Rose's youngest daughter get married, got to hold his first great-great-grandchild, got to celebrate his and Willow's 58th anniversary. He passed away in his sleep one October night, Willow beside him as she had been for nearly 6 decades. His last words to her, spoken just before they settled down for the night, were, "Best day of my life was the day I met you. Best decision I ever made was loving you." The grief was crushing, as Willow had known it would be. But she remembered her promise and held onto it like a lifeline. She kept living, kept writing, kept helping others. The ranch stayed in the family, run now by Thomas's children with wisdom and care. Willow lived another 7 years without Grant, years that were bittersweet. She missed him every single day, but she also felt him with her, guiding her, supporting her. She continued to receive letters from women inspired by her story, and she kept answering them, kept offering hope and encouragement. She spent time with her children and grandchildren, passing down stories and wisdom, making sure they knew their family history, understood the legacy of love and partnership their grandparents had built. She finished a second book, this one about building a life of equality and mutual respect in marriage, and it was even more successful than the first. On what would have been their 65th anniversary, Willow sat alone on the porch swing, holding the music box Grant had given her all those years ago. She wound it up and let the waltz play, remembering dancing with him in the kitchen, at their anniversary parties, in the parlor when they couldn't sleep. "I kept my promise," she said to the empty air. "I kept living, Grant. I hope you're proud of me." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the tree Grant had planted when Thomas was born, and Willow smiled. She could almost feel his presence, almost hear him saying he was proud, that he loved her, that he was waiting. When Willow passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 93, surrounded by 3 generations of family, her last words were, "I'm coming, Grant. I'm coming home." At her funeral, Rose read from her mother's memoir, the section where Willow described the day Grant freed her from the saloon. "He gave me more than freedom that day," Willow had written. "He gave me dignity, partnership, and love. He showed me that I was worthy of respect, deserving of equality. He made me his partner in every sense of the word, and together we built a life beyond my wildest dreams. If I could speak to every woman trapped in circumstances beyond her control, I would tell her this: you are worthy of more. You deserve respect. You deserve equality. You deserve love that lifts you up rather than holding you down. And somewhere out there is someone who will see your value and honor it. Don't give up hope." The ranch continued to prosper under the stewardship of Grant and Willow's descendants, who ran it according to the principles their grandparents had established: hard work, fair dealing, respect for all people, and the belief that partnership and equality made everything stronger. Years later, a historical marker was placed at the edge of the property, commemorating the Oliver Ranch as a site of historical significance. It told the story of Grant and Willow Oliver, who had built one of the most successful ranches in Kansas based on the principles of equality and mutual respect. It mentioned Willow's books and her advocacy for women's rights, Grant's reputation as a fair and honest businessman, and the legacy they had left behind. But the real legacy was not in the marker or the books or even the ranch itself. It was in the countless lives they had touched, the women Willow had helped escape bad situations, the men Grant had treated with fairness when others would not have, the children and grandchildren they had raised to believe in equality and kindness. It was in the marriages built on partnership that descended from their example, in the businesses run with integrity, in the community of Newton that remembered them fondly decades after they were gone. It was in every person who read Willow's story and found the courage to demand better for themselves, in every man who read it and realized he could be more than what society told him to be. Grant and Willow Oliver had started with a simple act of kindness, one man paying a debt to honor a dead friend's memory. But they had built it into something extraordinary, a love story that proved that true partnership, true equality, and true love could not only survive but thrive, creating ripples that spread far beyond their own lives. They had started as strangers, he a cowboy with a debt to pay, she an indentured woman with no hope. They became partners, equals, lovers, and ultimately legends, not for any great deed of heroism, but for the simple revolutionary act of treating each other with respect, building a life together as true equals, and loving each other with a devotion that lasted beyond death. Their story became part of the fabric of Kansas history, taught in schools as an example of how life was in the Old West for ordinary people who did extraordinary things simply by loving well and living with integrity. And though Grant and Willow were long gone, their love story continued to inspire, generation after generation, a testament to the enduring power of kindness, partnership, and love that sees and honors the full humanity of another person. In the end, that was their greatest legacy, not the ranch or the money or the books, but the proof that love built on equality and respect could change not just two lives, but the world around them, creating ripples of hope and possibility that would echo through time long after they were gone.